We finally got some answers from Nintendo this morning about pricing and some other details. We wanted to go through all of these interviews with answers coming out and talk about a couple of things. One, because we worked at Nintendo and used to write these answers for these types of interviews, we want to sort of like dissect them and see, are they really saying what they're trying to say, or are they trying to like pull some PR jargon in our faces?
Yeah, it's the start of another week, another wave of Switch 2 information. When is it going to die down? We don't know.
Never.
But yes, it is interesting for us in particular to look at interview responses because there were different people being interviewed. And it's not just the case of like, well, talking off the cuff, here's what I think about this. It's like, no, they basically have a script that's called a Q&A that is written by people like us that gets reviewed and approved. And it's like, these are our, agreed upon group collective answers on so many different topics.
Agreed and approved.
Well, yes.
Yes.
That's what that means.
Right.
So it's so interesting to see what exactly they say on some of these hard topics where do they actually give you an answer and where they just kind of like duck and it's like, let's move on, please.
And also, what could be the possible answer they're hiding from?
Yes.
There's a lot to dissect here.
Yes.
So yeah, let's just kind of go through what happened. So we were kind of wondering about this last week when there was so much conversation about price, so much confusion about price, as we were noting in some of the videos we shared last week. And we were wondering when Nintendo was going to come out to do anything official and clear up any of these misconceptions or misinformation, or just have some sort of official answer about it. So this is the official answers. They did do interviews at that event for Switch 2 in New York that was happening just, the day of the Direct and following. And these interviews were embargoed, meaning the media that did these interviews with people at Nintendo could not publish them until today. And today is Monday, April 7th. So they had waited a few days for these to hit, basically.
It's an interesting strategy because obviously this is based on the information of the announcement, the information of the Direct, but we're basically saying we're going to wait to let this run. And I think their thinking was, there's a lot of information in that first wave. Let's give people time to absorb all of that, think about that, talk about that, and then we'll hit them again with more.
Right.
We're going to talk later on whether this was actually a good strategy or not. I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, me too.
But let's look at the people who they actually put out there
right.
to do the interviews, because that's interesting. And we were spokespeople.
Yes, we were.
Back in our time.
In our time.
We were some of the poor people who get put out there to do this.
To have to deal with these hard questions.
And this
sometimes.
is truly a thankless job, and this is understood by the people at Nintendo of America to be a thankless job, because at the minimum, you say the right thing, great.
You did your job.
You did what you were supposed to. If not, you say something wrong.
You get in big trouble.
It becomes a big problem in a lot of different ways. So this is a tough job, and they have really kind of retracted the strategy of putting people out to even do interviews. We talk a lot about it. It had been like more than a year and a half since Doug Bowser had did an interview and he made his big return. He was one of the main spokespeople. He seemed to be assigned to the very mainstream,
the business,
more financially oriented,
yep.
which is the right people for him to talk to.
Right. That was who Reggie used to talk to, for example.
Absolutely.
He would be on like MSNBC and like, those kinds of media outlets.
Yes. And then we also had the dynamic duo of Nate Bihldorff and Bill Trinen talking to some of the more like game knowledgeable outlets, like game focused outlets like an IGN. They're both now, the people were surprised to see like, oh, these guys are vice presidents now? Like I remember them back in the GameCube days.
Yeah, when they were like buddies in the localization team.
Right.
Bill obviously famously used to be Mr. Miyamoto's translator. Nate has been a writer on a lot of our favorite games like Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi. So yeah, it is interesting to see the two of them basically like become really, business people now.
Yes, and they're the two top figures of the Treehouse. Nate runs the Treehouse, and Bill is just a step below him.
Right.
Running this new team, it's like player and product experience.
Right, exactly.
What do you think of, did this strike you as the right people? If you had to pick three people, would these be the three people you would choose?
I think these are the ones that you got, honestly.
Yes.
Like Doug, Doug has to do it. He does not have a choice. He's the president of Nintendo of America. This is part of the job. to be an official company spokesperson of like one of the highest authorities. And if you are going to be answering tough questions about like tariffs and price and a lot of those kinds of business related questions, he is the only one that can do it. So check mark on him. I love Nate and Bill. I think that they obviously are extremely knowledgeable about the product and about the games. You know, they have that one-to-one connection with the development team, so they're really getting like all of the key information about the games that they can tell us about. So, and they're both like great spokespeople too. So I do think that this is like they're very seasoned, and if you're putting people out there to do this like hard job, at least you know that these people are like seasoned. They know how to manage these types of conversations. They know how to get away from questions they shouldn't answer. Like very unlikely for these three people to make like some horrific mistake. So yeah, I think they were great.
I agree. I think this is the best trio that they could have picked. And I think in particular with Nate and Bill, like they do have a lot of that long-term respect of people who have been following Nintendo. They're names that people know.
Totally.
They're also extremely personable, like in person when you're talking to them. And I could kind of sense, and even in some of the written interviews, like where they would get asked a hard question and they were able to kind of deflect it with like a joke or a laugh.
Yeah.
And that's a skill in and of itself.
Right.
And not everybody can do that. Like we saw like Doug Bowser in a TV interview. You were doing some body language doctor stuff here. Like watching him like wring his hands.
Again, we used to have to do a lot of the training for media interviews as well. Like that was part of our job at Nintendo. Was like once we had written all of the Q&A and everything, we would get the people that were doing interviews to practice it. We would have to practice it too, and they would always say a lot about like, watch your body language. And like when someone asks you a question that's negative, don't start nodding automatically because you're basically agreeing with them.
You're confirming that, yes.
Is Mario Kart too expensive? Oh yeah. Even if,
I don't know if I'd say that.
I don't know if I would say that, but you know, and noting like, you know, things like I was watch people's hands.
Yeah.
If your hands are really like tight, you're kind of clutching.
It's like you're at the dentist getting like work done.
You're like,
just get through it.
Yeah, it's like that like Arthur meme where like the fist clenches. It's like that. But yeah, I think especially Nate. Nate is just like funny. Like that's his personality, and he is just like a very like charismatic person in general.
Right. They're managing the tone of the interview through their personality and their approach to being more fun.
And that's why it's good to have these two out there because you can trust that in sort of a pinch when they need to do a little bit of just like, let me get out of this by distracting you with this shiny object that is my dynamic personality. It works.
Yes,
you know?
it certainly does.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into what they actually said. So almost every interview, and there were a lot of interviews. Like you could spend all day reading these. We spent all morning reading as many as we could find. Pricing was one of the key topics in all of these. It's something. By the time they did these interviews, a lot of that discourse had happened,
or was in the midst of happening.
Right. So people could ask and kind of reflect the mood of the consumer. And I'm going to read the quote from Doug Bowser on Switch 2 game prices, because this is very interesting, and this was not something that they had shared before. What you see right there is variable pricing. We'll look at each game, really look at the development that's gone into the game, the breadth and depth of the gameplay, if you will, the durability over time, and the repeatability of gameplay experiences. Those are all factors, and there's many more that go into consideration of what is the right price point for the game. So I think you can anticipate there will be variable pricing, and we have not set a benchmark.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is an answer that has been meticulously workshopped by probably hundreds of people at this point at the company. From people that you expect to have an opinion about something like this, like a Mr. Furukawa, for example.
He said this one into the mirror 50 times the night before.
Oh, yeah. It's like the Bloody Mary thing, but you're talking about variable pricing. But yeah, basically this has gone through the ringer at Nintendo to make sure it's the most sanitized and safe answer you can get. But I want to dig into this answer a little bit and really get to what they're trying to get you to believe and what they're actually hiding from you. So this quote, variable pricing. So what they want you to take away as the person reading this answer or as the customer is like, obviously, every game is going to be priced differently. And $80 in the case of Mario Kart World, is not going to become the standard. So I do believe them there. I think that that is a factual statement. But this thing about we haven't set a benchmark is where this answer starts to get a little bit like, I'm a little suspicious now. Because I think one thing that you brought up that I thought was like a really good point when we were talking about price in some videos last week was like, if they're going to go the high end, if we think that $80 Mario Kart World is the high end of their variable pricing, then like what is a AAA first party title that's the low end?
Yes.
And since they haven't benchmarked it and they say that here, I am very reluctant to believe that the low end is much lower than, like, say, a $70 game.
I will not stop banging this drum that I'm actually fine with variable pricing. I think I agree that I will be playing Mario Kart World for probably hundreds and hundreds of hours, and I will extract like the wet towel, all of the the value and gameplay that there is for that. But you cannot have variable pricing without exercising the lower end of that as well. So I really want to know, like, let's use WarioWare as an example for the next WarioWare game. That's not costing as much to make as a Mario Kart World or a Tears of the Kingdom type game. Is that going to be $30? Is that going to be $40? I don't know, and I don't really trust them to fully exercise both ways. Because if you do it both ways, you're kind of meeting in the middle, which is where we were before.
Right, you're averaging out.
And I think that's okay. But if this is just a way to cover up things are going to be more expensive, and look out, something might be $90 too. I don't like that.
Yeah, that's the danger with this answer is that since we don't know the high and low of the variable for the pricing, it's really hard for the customer to take away, like, well, what is the low end, what is the high end? And could it be just, this is $80, $70 is the low end, and we're just going to go higher from, that's what we mean by variable.
They do talk about some of the criteria that goes into this here. So the development of the game, basically the budget of the game, how much did it cost us to make, and then
depth of gameplay.
Basically, like, how long can you play it, or how much replayability does it have? And I do think in the case of Mario Kart, it does tick a lot of those boxes. And they did also point out that Donkey Kong Bananza is not $80; it's $70. So I guess, looking at their criteria, it's not a multiplayer game as we understand it now. I don't think it's going to have multiplayer, so it's
not open world, maybe, or
whatever.
So
it does seem to be in some distinct levels and areas. So I guess I can start to understand it. Although, if I was a developer, like, I'd be kind of,
like miffed.
I would take a point of pride in this. Of like, wait, we put so much, like, we're the Mario 3D, we think, team making this game, too. Like. We
Where's
deserve
our
to be at the top of
game?
this. So it's an interesting kind of thing that they're introducing into this whole discussion.
Like, what are you worth?
Externally and internally.
What is your value? What is your value? What is your worth?
And I should say, when we were there was occasionally a developer that would raise this topic. Of like, hey, how this game that I'm making sure is a big deal. It sure is big and chunky, and it's got a lot of stuff. What if we price it a little bit higher? And people at NOA would talk them down off of this.
True.
And that is a time when Reggie was there. I don't know, I was not privy to the details of all of those discussions. We would just hear like, oh yeah, that came up, but we talked them out of it.
Yeah, there was also like, prices would change throughout a marketing campaign where you're like, actually we're gonna lower, we kind of had more forecasting, we had more whatever. Like internally, before announcing the final price, there has been instances where like, okay, before we announce the final price, we're actually going to do one more check. I think they're past this point. I don't think they're going to do this now. But those discussions were happening internally with development teams and business teams. The other thing that is really interesting to me that he said is this quote here about durability over time and the repeatability of gameplay experiences. So in the example, again, of Mario Kart being sort of their marquee showcase of like, this is maybe the high end of their variable pricing at the $80 mark. If they announce paid DLC for this game, for Mario Kart World, this answer totally falls apart. Because it's like, you basically told me that I'm all in at $80 and I will have durability over time and repeatability of gameplay experiences for a really long time. That is a way for me to justify in my head, like, awesome.
It just got more durable, Krysta. This is the mithril armor of game
$10
experiences.
For it to be more
this
durable.
This is a plus 10 to durability.
Oh, I see. And I need to pay $10 for it. I get it. Okay.
It's actually 20.
Oh.
We're going to talk more about Mario Kart World. They had some separate comments on that.
But any game, I think, if you make a point that like, oh, you're paying this much because you're getting X amount of gameplay and, repeatability of the experience out of it, if you then go to charge pay DLC, that answer is like, it falls apart. You know what I mean? So
one more thing I'll add to this. We did see kind of in the last stretch of our tenure at Nintendo them get really obsessed and fixated on like the value of the Nintendo product.
True.
And an unrelated but still related example of this is we would sometimes get approached by somebody who's like, oh, can we do a giveaway of this product? Can we get like 5 copies and we'll do a giveaway to our community? And if we would ever take those to like Japan, for example, for them to consider it, we would often get a long lecture, especially in the last couple years that we were there, of like, Nintendo products have immense value, we must always respect that immense value. And this is why you see these things don't go on sale. It's like,
right, that's another point.
The value is the value, and we are really like seriously into that concept of respect the value of what this thing is that we have made because it is very special.
Yeah, and on the one point, it's a great thing for the brand because you are trained, like basically as a consumer, to think like, oh, like this is worth the price. It's not like
this isn't Ubisoft.
I was just gonna say it's not like the Ubisoft situation where I always tell myself, if I wait a month, will this get cheaper?
Right.
Like as a Nintendo customer fan, I feel like all of us are kind of like conditioned to be like, well, I'm gonna buy. If I want to buy this, I might as well buy this now because it's not going to go on sale.
Yeah.
So yeah, on the one hand, it does, good things for their brand in terms of like training your brain to do that. But in the other way, it's like, well, how far are you taking this concept of like how much your stuff is worth? Because again, there is so many other factors that come into pricing something, but the sort of the weight that they put on this just being something from the magical box that is Nintendo makes it like you're paying like a Nintendo markup.
It's a Nintendo tax.
Nintendo tax.
I mean, you could also say like them looking at it, it's like, well, this game that we made was $60. A lot of those other games that are $60 are junk. Like they don't have the Nintendo level of quality or polish or attention. So we do need to distinguish that like how premium this thing is through the pricing, and you will come to understand that.
Please understand.
Let's move on. We got pretty much the same comment from Bill Trinen in less detail, but again, using that point about looking at each individual game and understanding the value.
Sure.
Tariffs.
Yes.
So these were kind of happening in the moment.
Yeah, in like concert to what they were doing, which was a tough situation
as
for
the
them.
interviews were happening.
Yeah.
But Doug Bowser did say that the tariffs were not factored into the $449 price of the Switch 2. And on the topic of delaying the pre-orders, he said, the news is fresh, and like many companies right now, we are actively assessing what the impact may be. The point about the tariff not being baked in, like the fact that a tariff was being discussed, that was not new information.
Right.
Like we knew about that being a possibility for months. So there was some conversation of like, well, did they hedge their bets and bake that into the price, maybe being a little bit higher with the expectation that, hey, this could come or go or could be an impact on us down the road. Sounds like it wasn't.
Sounds like it wasn't, although...
Do you believe that?
I don't believe that. I was going to say, I feel like this is one of those things where they're trying as much as possible to kind of separate themselves from the drama that is tariffs. There's so many things that they just don't want to touch in terms of any sort of association with...
Political topics are always just...
That's just a no.
It's a stay away.
It's also very like, yes, it has a global impact, but it's also very like US based, and this is a global product. So there's like a thing about like, we got to make these messages like very broad.
Well, however, this is... it is something that happens in the U.S., but the U.S. is by far the biggest market for Nintendo.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, well, if you're going to have this priced in the U.S., it's going to become the global price, except for this weird Japan bubble that they have created for that version. So it does actually have some global impacts because you can't have that much variability from region to region. But yeah, I'm like you. I don't totally... I think there could be like, well, not these tariffs. The other tariffs
there are other ones we were thinking of. Yeah. The other thing that he had said... There was a question in an interview about sort of the profit margins on hardware. And, we know like general industry, gaming industry standard in terms of profit margin. We've heard all the stories about, oh gosh, Sony's losing money on PS5, blah, blah, blah. Whereas Nintendo has always been like pretty good, healthy in terms of their profit margins on hardware. And, because of tariffs, because of some of these outside factors, is Nintendo going to lose money on Switch 2 hardware? And Doug was pretty like open to say like, we are not, losing money on hardware. Because the question,
lose money? We don't do that.
We don't do that. Yeah, because it's it's really like, well, is that why you're pricing the game so high? Because you gotta recoup the cost because you're losing money on hardware from tariffs, and the answer really was like, we are not losing. The margins are slim, but we have margins. So that's interesting in the face of tariffs and the percentage of tariffs for Switch 2 and like what that means. And of course, they did have that statement last week that was like, we are going to pause pre-orders in the U.S. until the situation is stabilized a little bit. So I do wonder what that could mean for the price.
Well, I hadn't seen that particular interview comment, but it is interesting with what's to come, where they do need to make a decision on resuming pre-orders, and there's kind of a fork in the road of like if the tariff goes through, either we raise the price or we're going to have to eat some of that ourselves.
Exactly.
And knowing that how much they like to always be making money on this thing, I don't know. It's a hard decision, and certain people will definitely have a strong point of view on that.
They're going to have a debate about that a little bit.
Who ultimately is paying for this, us or the consumer?
And long term, what is the least of the evils is the question to answer.
Right, especially when this is a new platform, you really want to get it in people's houses so they can start buying games, which is where you're making a lot of the money.
Move over your 150,000 million install base, all that stuff.
Back to Mario Kart World. So there was some justification on the $80 pricing. I'm so glad that people said, can you please tell me why this is $80?
Yes. Give me the bullet points.
I think we've all been wondering.
We want to know.
This is a quote from Bill Trinen, who said, well, I just say it's less about the strategy of pricing Mario Kart World. It's more about whenever we look at a given game, we just look at what is the experience and what's the content and what's the value. Very similar to what Doug was saying.
Right.
Mario Kart World, I think especially, as you will see from the Nintendo Direct, not to give you any hints or anything, but I did read your article this morning, and I think you had mentioned that you didn't find a lot to discover when roaming around. So I would say tune in to our Mario Kart Direct to see what maybe you'll be able to find out about that. But honestly, this is a game that is so big and so vast, you will find so many little things in it to discover. And there's still some other secrets remaining that I think as people end up buying and playing the game, they're going to find this to be probably the richest, interesting choice of words, Mario Kart experience they have ever had.
Yeah. So really digging into the scope of the game here. And again, I'm not like the biggest believer, and we've talked about this before, about like, the price of a game equals the amount of hours you spend in it, or like how big the open world is, how many little like mini games you can have in the open world, how many completionist Koroxis can you find, etc. But this is a way that people understand scopes of games to justify the scope of a game, or to.
So you're saying Nintendo will be padding its games from here on to raise the price?
I don't know about that, but I'm a little concerned that his answer was all about like all of the, all the little details you can find, all the little, like, these are the things that this feels like it's like we made an open world Mario Kart game and we packed it full of stuff, but is it for the overall fun of the game, or is it just to make sure that you have enough to do to justify $80?
I imagine they're a little staggered that they did all the days of Treehouse Live that included multiple segments on this game.
Yes.
And still the ongoing message was drop the price. Like, I imagine they felt like, well, we're going to show you a lot. We're going to show you this in action. You're going to really come around on it. That didn't happen. So there's a ton of pressure on this Mario Kart Nintendo Direct to really justify the price. I am assuming that I mean, we're going to be pretty close to this game coming out at that, like a month and a half.
Right.
There's not a lot more time for big blockbuster reveals. I think they need to show us as much as they possibly can in that Nintendo Direct to get people, yes, I'm in. This could be the decision of me pre-ordering a system or not, of really hunting down a system at launch or not. They need to deliver on that.
Yeah, this is a situation where they actually have to get out of their, current mindset of like, we don't want to spoil the surprise for consumers. I totally get that, and I like that too for a lot of stuff, like, for Zelda games or even for Metroid games. Like, it's great to have like a cool, surprise for in the story mode or something like that. That's a bit more you've kind of cloaked this before the game launches. But I think that would be a really bad strategy for this because of the discussion around pricing and the value of Mario Kart. If we do not see lots and lots of things in that Direct that justify this price point, like
more so than any other game
any other game ever has.
We've never had a game with a base price in the modern era
this high
of $80.
That's right.
Not some special edition.
Right.
Not some limited edition that comes with a statue. Just the game.
Oh my gosh, if they announce paid DLC in this Direct,
that'll be so interesting to see.
I will lose my mind.
Right.
I will quite literally lose my mind.
And introducing the Animal Crossing pack that's going to cost you, and the Zelda pack, and the blah 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 pack.
Oof. I am Nintendo, please don't do this, because this is a way for them to like sell us on the price.
Yes.
Like tell us what makes this game so special,
right.
such a developmental marvel. Like so incredible. Like, let me understand, oh yeah, I definitely will be playing this game for 8 years. Like, it totally is worth it. It's going to be that experience for me.
I'm leaning towards being confident that they will answer that question, but I'm not confident that there's not going to be paid DLC either. I think both of these things...
Can be true?
I think both of these things will be true. Ooh. We're going to keep ringing that towel, okay?
Oh, I'm getting nervous.
Again,
now look at my hands.
We sold 75 million copies of this game across Switch and the Wii U.
Yeah.
We're going to make that money.
Oh, man.
We are making that money.
Oh, man.
All right, that's enough Mario Kart. Other information. Switch to Welcome Tour, which is the game that should be a pack-in but is not a pack-in.
Let's not call it a game. It's like a tech demo.
Well, that's the other thing is we don't exactly know super well what this is, I would say.
Yeah.
Like it got like a minute in the Direct. There were some impressions of it.
They played a little bit of it on Treehouse Live.
I still wouldn't say I have a total handle on it. Anyway, up until these interviews, we did not know the price of this.
Right.
We just
knew it was paid.
We knew it would be paid and it would not be packed in for free. So, confirmed in the interview, it's $10 in our region.
Right.
I'll read this is another quote from Bill. For some people, I think there are people who are particularly interested in the tech and the specs of the system and things like that. For them, I think it's going to be a great product. It's really for people that want more information about the system rather than necessarily a quick intro to everything it does. And for that reason, and just the amount of care and work that the team put into it, I think it was decided that, yeah, this feels like $9.99 is not an exorbitant price. It feels like a good value for what you are getting out of the product. Mm-hmm. His answer, again, still does not really tell me what this is. Didn't mention anything about playing this. It's more of like walking around and being told about a GPU.
Yeah, it didn't mention like the experience that you're paying $10 for. Like, is it in... Like, if I were the customer that is really interested in tech and specs, as Bill says, that this is for, like, what about this welcome tour will show me that in an interesting and fun way that is worth the $10 I'm paying? Like, I don't think I really got the answer from this statement.
This goes back to what we were saying before about the value must be respected at all costs.
Yeah.
When you put it into the thing for free, yes, a lot of people will experience, but the full value is not being recognized.
Right.
And so many people have been, sharing quotes from Reggie's book where he talked about really fighting the fight about Wii Sports, which was not packed in Japan. You had to buy it in Japan. I'm like, again, who is fighting these fights on the NOA side now?
Yeah.
Not many people.
Right.
So it's like, hey, I'm the big boss in Japan and I've got a big idea. Whether it's good or not, nobody's really like pushing up against it or challenging it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even offering like a different perspective.
Right, which is too bad because in one case you might be able to talk them into a different idea that's better.
Right.
Or you might just be able to strengthen the idea in general versus like, yes, we will do it.
Exactly. And I really get the sense that is what happened here with this. Yeah, and this is really a non-answer. Like, $10 is not like a crazy price to argue over.
Will you pay $10?
No.
I'll buy it for $10.
Okay, great.
I'll check it out.
See, for me, it's the principle of it. I just can't get over that.
Okay.
Like, it's just so wrong, for something that really could show you, like, what is cool about the system. Like, for someone that like me that's not super interested in tech and specs, but like if you had a fun little pack-in that would give me that information, it would just give me so much more affinity for the product that I just paid $450 for, that I want to start to love. Like, I love my Switch. I want to start to like integrate this new thing into my life for probably 8+ years. Like, why would you not want to give me like a feel-good thing to let me learn and like kind of fall in love with the system? You really have to charge me $10 for that? I'm not paying for that. It's ridiculous.
Remember, PlayStation 5 launched with that Astrobot game. You know what that system sold for? $500. You take that out, how much you get? $449. The same as a Switch 2. Look at that. Makes you think.
This is basically, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Welcome Tour World Tour could have been Game of the Year 2026, and since you did not pack this in, it's not going to happen.
Yikes. There were some comments about the developer of Donkey Kong Bananza, which people have pointed out is a mystery, interestingly.
Yes.
I think most people have settled on the notion that it's done by the Tokyo team that did Mario Odyssey and all the other recent 3D Mario games, but Nintendo just won't say.
They're doing that thing again, where they're getting cagey about stuff for no reason. But Bill did have a quote.
Here's what he said. It's a very good question. You'll have to stay tuned.
I won't be answering.
We always like to start by showcasing the game and getting people focused on the gameplay, but we'll have some information to share about the developer in due time. How would that distract me from the gameplay, Krysta?
It might just make me more excited about the gameplay.
Right.
Now, this is the thing. They like made like a blanket rule about how there's somebody like a year ago.
I think it's Mr. Takahashi.
It's probably Mr. Takahashi who made like some silly blanket rule that was like, we need people to not focus on the people behind.
Even when it's good news that would get people really excited.
Yeah, we need them to not focus on the people that are doing these things. We're basically like a conglomerate blob of Nintendo making stuff. And that's what we got to keep people focused on. Like, God forbid we have a face behind anything.
A game made by the 3D Mario team is just as good as an external team making Princess Peach Showtime. They're basically the same. Basically the same thing. Yes. I've seen some people asking, like, if we're so sure, then who cares? I'll tell you why I care, and I'd like to know why you care. I'm curious. There's multiple people inside that studio who are capable of leading games.
Right.
So you have Mr. Motokura, who led Odyssey.
Yep.
And then you have Mr. Hayashida, who led Super Mario 3D Land and Captain Toad and some other things. So I'm thinking about the possibility of when might a 3D Mario game be coming? Do we have to set the clock at 7 years from now, or is there maybe somebody else toiling away on that kind of in parallel to this? That's why I would like to know.
That's one of two reasons why I deeply care. I definitely care because we had expected a 3D Mario game to launch, to be announced during that Switch 2 Direct, and we got this great game, a 3D Donkey Kong game. It looks fantastic. We're both super, super excited about it. But I am still holding out a little bit of hope that a 3D Mario game is coming pretty soon.
Yes.
Like, we do think that there is, like, that window of the holiday season where there's got to be another surprise, another big, AAA Nintendo game that they haven't told us about yet. So is that happening, or have the teams focused on this 3D Donkey Kong game? Because this game is coming out in July.
And at this point, I don't think they would do this July and that in November, but it is a question of, like, would it be, maybe a year later or 6 years later?
Yeah, and also I would like to know, because the scope of the game could feel really different.
Yeah.
Like, if it's a Mr. Hayashida game, like, I can imagine it being, like, very, like, almost like a little bit more puzzle focused. Maybe there is some elements, we were talking to Steven Totilo about his hands-on of this game. Like, it felt like it was very, like, see if you can break this world, and, like, you go as far as you think you can go in terms of, like, breaking this world. And that's a different vibe than, like, sort of the exploratory kind of sense of an Odyssey game. So I think it would just give me a clue about, like, what am I going to get into in terms of the type of game this is. So I'm curious to know about that, and I think that that's important information to share with people. I mean, maybe they have a time in mind where they're going to be telling us about that more, but I would like to know.
Right. There must be presumably some reason. I mean, it sounds like we will find out. They didn't say like, oh, we're gonna. No, they have a plan.
It's not like that one time where they're like, Doug was like, just read the credits.
Yeah, they have a plan for this.
Yeah.
We don't yet know what that plan is.
Okay.
Hall effect Joy-Con.
Yes.
This is some interesting information. I'm surprised that they addressed this the way that they did. So Nate got asked, I believe it was Nintendo Life that asked the question, and they just straight up ask, are the Joy-Con using Hall effect sticks? And Nate's answer was, well, the Joy-Con 2's controllers have been designed from the ground up. They're not Hall effect sticks, but they feel really good. Did you experience both the Joy-Con and the Pro Controller? And then they go on to talk about how the sticks are very quiet. And that's something that in the Ask the Developer, they also talked about, like, it's very smooth, it's very quiet. Some consternation about this reveal today.
Yeah, people were a little bit disappointed, I think, that it's not using Hall effect sticks because of the Joy-Con drift stuff. I mean, I trust that they have redesigned these controllers and fixed any issues. You seem less hopeful that this is the case.
I'm wondering, like, how, like, could they be big braining themselves into the wrong solution to this? Because again, like, this became a legal issue. So
yes.
Again, like, what does your decision imply about the thing that you did the last time?
Oh, you're thinking they don't want to take the blame.
And was it potentially wrong? It's like, so you did have a problem last time, which is why you moved to this.
Yeah. Okay.
Versus like trying your hardest to make something that actually is better. I mean, it's great that they're trying. It's great that they can acknowledge that.
Right.
But I just wonder about the role of all of that muddying the whole conversation around this.
That's true. I love Nate's answer because it's like the classic misdirect answer where it's like, I don't really want to get into the details of this because it can be a murky legal.
Right.
Kind of the legal team that reviewed this Q&As were like, don't go there because you could get yourself into trouble.
So he said, let's read this again. They're not Hall effect sticks, but they feel really good. Did you experience it? I am moving you off of this topic right now.
That is exactly why
we're not talking about this. We're talking about your experience with it.
Yeah,
very savvy.
Savvy, Nate. Good job. This is called bridging. So he basically, he distracted the Nintendo Life person by asking him. He turned the question on him and said, did you experience it? And how about the Pro Controller? And then got him talking about the Pro Controller. So now you're off of the Joy-Con.
And then the Nintendo Life person asked them about Mother 3.
And then their credibility was ruined.
Which they may not be invited back next time. Oops. Interesting stuff. Last thing here that we want to talk about, this is maybe communications nerdiness by our part.
Yes,
but
I love this
we talked at the top about the Q&A and how this is this voluminous thing that covers all of these different topics. There's something that's even more high level than that, which we call the key message architecture.
Yeah.
Where it's like beyond any individual questions that you're asked. It's like, what are the 3 or 4 takeaways about this thing in general that you want people to come away with?
Yeah.
And we saw both Doug and Bill open high-profile interviews with this. So we can basically tell this is the thing that they want you to know about the Switch 2.
And the thing that they want you to know is the thing that they think is the most important thing about Switch 2. And so it really sets the stage
If you remember anything, remember this.
Yeah, it really sets the stage for like the stuff that they're going to be continuing to push about Switch 2. So yeah, I nerd out over this stuff because I'm always like, what do they want me to think versus what I think for myself?
Yes.
You know? So yeah,
so here
you
comes.
can read it.
I'm going to read it for you. For us, the most important thing is we really want people to recognize and understand that, here it comes, Nintendo Switch 2 is the true successor to Nintendo Switch, takes what you love about Nintendo Switch, and then builds on it with a whole lot of new features and new capabilities and new games that take advantage of those, and really takes what has evolved gaming with Nintendo into something that's a lot more social through things like Game Chat, which takes what was the anytime, anywhere play of Nintendo Switch and makes it all together, anytime, anywhere.
Oh, he even put in the tagline into his answer. Wow, Bill.
So this is, again,
congratulations.
Let's all say this together 1,000 times.
Let's hold hands
and drill it into our memories.
On a grassy mountaintop.
Right.
But yeah, this is the one thing that Nintendo wants us, the fans, the customer, to take away from the Switch 2 event, and like really drill into us like this is what is special about the Switch 2.
Does this work for you as kind of a high level key message? For me, the first half of it does, the second half does not.
I was gonna say the first half of it around like being a true successor, like
building upon what you love.
We just want to make the thing that you love bigger and better.
Yeah.
Love that, makes sense, and it totally plays out with what the system is. Like when you actually look at the technical capabilities and what the system is, it is a factual way to describe it. The second part, the social part, which we kind of sniffed out in the direct when they spent like 5 minutes on this game chat thing, is something that I think Nintendo, the dev teams, are really excited about this game chat thing, and they're really excited about this, like kind of like almost like a rose-colored glasses view of like, oh, now you can have this like fuzzy moment of connecting with your friend that lives far away. You guys can play Mario Kart together. Isn't that cute? Like they want you to have that like emotional thing tied to this game chat thing, but I don't know if it's going to play out that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are unconvinced on this. Yeah. But again, like that is a message that we would often try to push as hard as we can because it was a differentiator of, the social aspect of these systems and these games. So I can understand why they tried to put it in there.
Yeah, for sure.
So we spent all morning reading through these. People have been spending all day talking about this new information. There was so much new information. Was this ultimately a good strategy to have all of these people who did these interviews wait until today versus in the moment as that event was happening?
I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to like parse out the volume of information, but I think that they were in a really, unique circumstance last week with all of the sort of the outcry that came out of the pricing, the pricing outrage, and it seemed like it was a mistake for them to hold these. Like, do you have something to say?
The problem with this is they gave us an incomplete story of the Switch 2 last week.
Right.
And the stuff that made it whole is the stuff that only came out today. The explanation behind the pricing, I don't know, like why not confirm the pricing for things like Welcome to, why not? Why would you wait until days later when people are just like, can you just not say that? It makes no sense.
And especially as people were flooding their Treehouse Live comments with stuff like this, as they're seeing the confusion and the rage like play out over the last few days, you couldn't just have released this stuff? Like, I don't understand.
Just tweet it out. Just to put it on Nintendo today. This will be $10. Just do it. So,
it's weird that they stuck to. It was very like, let's stick to the plan no matter what.
We must stick to the plan, yes.
Without any sort of flexibility on like read the room and see what you actually need to address.
Right. But again, like this notion of like splitting up the information into these two chunks, like couldn't they have known that people would really want to know the answers to some of these basic fundamental questions, or that when we're just rolling out a big like really paradigm changing thing like $80 games of like, oh, you can wait till Monday to find out. We'll talk about it then.
Well, they didn't even tell us that. They just were silent.
People want to know. Exactly.
It wasn't even like, okay, I will wait till Monday, I guess. It was just silence.
Like, people really need this information to come to grips with what this new platform is. Like, I'm going to be living with this for the next 7 to 8 years. I'd really like to understand it. And like, they are just like, well, I'm not going to tell you now.
Yeah, the lack of flexibility and the lack of, being able to kind of adjust to changing situations is really a sign of how out of practice they are in terms of communications. Because like we were saying, like this is a muscle that you didn't have to exercise for a long time. You didn't have any sort of big issues like this when Switch was doing well. This is sort of the first time where there is like so many factors that had come into play that made this a really challenging reveal, announcement for them. And the inability of them to be flexible in the face of that is really a showcase of like, oh, they have really like, they've not practiced this.
There's some other stuff that I'm more forgiving of being buried in an interview, like this Hall effect stuff. Like they were not going to proactively bring that up anyway. Yeah. So it's fine that just, we'll answer it if asked, but if not, we're going to pretend it doesn't exist. So I really think like, yes, do the interviews and just let people run them in the moment when they're ready.
Why wouldn't you do that?
I don't know. Just let the people these days, they can take in a lot of information. We are all trained to being bombarded with information that changes fast.
Yeah.
We want it all. That's how people are today.
Right.
And it's just like, oh, well, you can't handle this. You need it on Monday.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Did you see everything that happened between Wednesday and Monday?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that they did in this, whether it's around not putting the prices in a place that was very accessible to you, to the way that they really wanted to curb the rollout of information that was a little bit insulting to the intelligence of the consumer.
Yeah.
It's we got to baby you because we don't think you can handle us telling you what the prices are, so we got to put it in these other ways. Oh, you can't handle all this information. We have to spoon feed it to you very slowly because you can possibly be intelligent enough to understand all this information that we're giving you. It's a little bit insulting. It's just give us the information so we can make our own decision based on our own factors. You don't need to spoon feed this stuff to me. I'm good.
Right.
I'm an adult. I'm good.
But meanwhile, their My Nintendo pre-order program started in some regions. That's already completed. People know if they're getting a system or not. It's you need to know this information to come to an informed decision.
Right.
So ultimately, I do think spacing them out was the wrong approach.
I think so too. And if this was sort of the approach that they had, they're if everything went completely smooth and it was positively 100%, we're going to roll it out this way, it might have been a little bit more forgivable. But because so much stuff was happening in contrary to, and that could have been kind of fixed by having this information out there, I'm less forgiving.
Here's something else. You can change an embargo. If you do the interview on Wednesday, you get to Thursday, the thing blows up in your face, you can get on the phone and say, hey, Gene Park, actually run it now or run it tomorrow.
Exactly.
Before Monday.
That's the whole point of having these relationships with these media people.
And they would be glad to do it.
They'd be great, I was done anyway,
Great, people want this now.
Might have to do a little overnight work, but I mean, they won't be
that'll get some clicks, yeah.
Yeah, it's not like people are going to be no, you told me the embargo was this day and I can't change it. It's too bad.
The sanctity of the embargo must be respected.
We chisel this embargo into the marble,
this
and
is all we have
all
left
of you have
in
signed
civilization
it. The sanctity of the embargo.
Yes.
Wow. Anyhow, I'm sure that more things are going to come out, and we'll be on.
What'll it be tomorrow?
I don't know. It's just an adventure every day.
Well, what does happen next? So
that's true. What does happen next?
So the Direct is happening.
Yes. Mario Kart.
Pre-orders or not, this Direct is happening. They've already announced that date.
Yeah.
There is discussion on the tariff thing of is it going to change? We still don't know yet.
Right.
That's
in our region, in the U.S. region, we still
where we live. Yes.
Where we live.
Yes.
Where we exist. There's some questions.
That's still a big thing.
Yeah.
And there's also a discussion of might these get postponed by 90 days? I don't think that's a good thing for them. They want to know now because they need to start 90 days. The thing's going to be out. Well, we won't get too much into that.
Oh no.
That would be a whole other topic. But I think they would love to have a fast resolution to that question, but they may not get it.
Yeah,
because it's out of their hands.
This is one of the. I was just going to say this is one of those things where you can't fault them. This is completely out of their hands. They're also waiting and seeing what to do. Anyways, that's a separate video. We're going to get into that later. But let us know if you have been reading all of the stuff that's come out from these interviews, if there's any
maybe you found a solid gold nugget.
I was going to say, tell me if you have found an interesting tidbit or a nugget in there. Leave it in the comments. I think we're just all kind of doing the same thing, sifting through all of these and seeing what kinds of questions they are answering. Again, a little bit strange for them to expect us all to piecemeal it together like this, but here we are. This is our group project now until the Switch 2 launches. So please contribute if you can. We will be back with more videos this week, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.